We are nearing the end at day 27 of the 28-day photo challenge. Today we're doing night photography. Now here in the frozen north, this is something that you really need to learn because we only get a few hours of daylight every day. The majority of the time is night. So this is a very good skill that you should be mastering right from the start. So that way you can mix and match whatever equipment that you have on hand while still being able to take photos.
So just in the fashion of like yesterday's video, I'm absolutely dying of a migraine. My time, it's only been a few hours. In this video, I forgot to explain everything that was going on before I actually went out shooting because I just wanted to get it done, get home, and just die on the couch for a while. So now I'm just going to explain night photography and basically everything that you need to know for it. It's a fairly simple concept. It's just a balancing act. Now the most important aspect of this is going to be having a very fast lens. So this one that I was using for the shoot is f2.8. Now I did plan on using my f1.4 lens. However, I forgot it at home and I didn't realize until I had literally just got out and was about to start recording. So I wasn't about to drive halfway across the entire city to go get my lens and then come back to the same spot to try and shoot the video again. So in these examples, it's kind of like a worst case scenario because the larger the aperture, the more light gets let in, the less noise, the lower the ISO can be, which is pretty much where the balancing act goes. Because you want to have the ISO to be as low as possible, achieving a good exposure, keeping the aperture as wide as possible, and the shutter speed, you want it to be as low as it can be, but as fast as it needs to be that you can take a still photo handheld. If you have a tripod, then none of this really matters. You could take exposures for as long as you want, but when you're doing it handheld, you have to balance the ISO and the shutter speed. So for this entire shoot, I just set the aperture to f2.8. The shutter speed was 1/50th of a second. And then from there, I just played with the ISO. I just raised it up as needed, lowered it back down. I didn't go any less than ISO 8000. And it just kind of ranged between like 8000 to 16,000. So all of the shots were kind of all over the place, but that was my range of ISO usage. And there was actually one shot. I kept it in just because that picture was shot at ISO 25,600. Now the picture's super grainy, it's not sharp at all, but I did a lot of like corrections in Photoshop to try and make it not garbage. So when that picture comes up in the footage that'll be coming next of showing all of the shots, I'll put a little note saying the ISO for that specific photo. Now one thing I did notice is because it's the middle of the night, I can't just like walk up to a whole bunch of stuff, so having distance would have been beneficial. So an 85mm f1.2 or 85mm f1.7 would have been a vital asset for this shoot. However, I wanted to have kind of like a broader range of wide angle and zoom, so I was going to bring the 50mm f1.4, but that was the one that I forgot at home. So instead, every single shot is shot at 70mm f2.8. So we can watch the whole adventure, and then I'll meet you back at the end. If only I had the other lens. I'm an idiot. The snowbank's too high. I can't like get a good shot of the building. This looks kind of neat. My hands hurt. Oh my god, everything hurts. The weather lied. Because it's minus 21 right now and I can't feel my hand. I mean, I can feel my hand, it just hurts. Ow. Like, it's getting to the point that my lens is getting hard to move. There's so much resistance, it's like freezing. Whoa, that looks cool over here. Those yellow lights down there look cool too. Oh, there's water. I haven't seen that stuff in a while. What is that? That is so cool. Neat. Oh, these weird things with like the not trees in them. they're backwards trees. So hopefully after all of that, you kind of have like a better understanding of just like how frequently settings are being changed for every single picture, because lighting is so delicate when it comes to night photos. But basically, like the main rule of thumb is you want to have a lens that's like an f2.8 or higher. And now like we have to kind of explain f-stop a little bit here. So if I take like a 24-70 f2.8, that f stands for focal length. 24 millimeter is the focal length to 70 millimeter focal length. And then the forward slash in f-stop, so it's f forward slash and then some numbers, that's an equation. And I'm just going to try and like quickly sum this up. So there's like way more to it, but this will just kind of give you the gist of how it works. Is you take the focal length, so say 24 millimeters, forward slash means divide. So 24 divided by the f-stop of 2.8. 24 divided by 2.8. And that equals 8.57 millimeters, which is the diameter of the entrance pupil for the aperture. So that means that 24 millimeters, the entrance pupil of the aperture is 8.57 millimeters. Now, if we zoom into 70 and we do the exact same equation, so 70 divided by 2.8, that's 25 millimeters. So now there's a huge discretion between both those numbers, but the input lighting doesn't actually change. And I think the best way I can think of explaining this is when you have a very wide lens, there's tons of light being absorbed into the sensor. So going into a much finer area is letting in more light into a smaller concentrated area. Whereas when you're zoomed in, it's a much tighter circle. The entrance pupil of the aperture needs to be wider to allow the same amount of light from a narrow opening to hit the sensor. And that's just like the easiest way that I can explain it. There's way more to it. It's a lot more scientific than that, but that's why aperture numbers are backwards. The larger the aperture, the smaller the number. Because if we take the focal length of 24 millimeter divided by, say, f4, now the entrance pupil is only 6 millimeters. So by raising that f-stop from 2.8 to 4, the entrance pupil in the aperture has changed from 8.57 millimeters down to 6 millimeters. So now less light is going to be coming in, even though the focal length is the same width. But that's pretty much it. You want to have a very fast lens, big aperture, f2.8 or larger. So like f2, 1.8, 1.7, 1.4, or like 1.2 if you're lucky enough. Or you can even go larger than that if you go for some like ridiculous manual lenses and stuff, but that's significantly further out of the scope of this video. You just want to set your shutter speed to like something that you're comfortable holding without shaking, and keeping that as low as possible. So that way you're still letting in as much light as you can, because the faster the shutter speed, the darker the photo. So you want that to be as low as possible. And then from that point, you're literally only adjusting the ISO to compensate the brightness. You have one setting for everything once you have the other two set. And the ISO is kind of, it doesn't really make any sense anymore, because ISO was like the exposure of film, but now that cameras are all digital, ISO just essentially means like your like overclocking ratio. The higher the ISO, the higher the sensor is manually being forced to absorb more light than would naturally hit it. That's why there's a native ISO, and then that's the native amount of light that it is made to accept. Anything less than that, and it's blocking more light than normal, and anything higher than that, and it's essentially like an overclock. It's being forced to let more light in, which then makes grain and noise in your photo, which you can fix in Photoshop, but it's never perfect. So it's always best to make the practice in camera use, so you have less repairs to do in post, which is where that one photo comes in, where I was looking across like all of the docks and everything, and there was some like light thing in the background. The ISO was 25,600 for that photo, and the whole reason for that is because that photo is exposing more than I could actually see in front of me. I could only see the first few docks. Everything from that point on was just completely black. I couldn't actually see it, and that kind of goes into the overclocking thing, is that sensor was literally picking up more light than I could naturally see within a regular exposure period. Which, using a few different denoise tools and everything, I was able to take a lot of it out, but I've lost so much sharpness in that picture that it just looks like a night shot from like a phone or something. So the short story here is that night photography is very unforgiving, but it is 100% a skill that you want to learn, because in the frozen north in Canada, we use this all the time. Like that entire video was shot at like 7:30 p.m. pitch black. But I am absolutely dying of this migraine, and I now have to edit all of this footage and finish this video up, preferably without throwing up, because I'm dying right now. So hopefully you found something useful in this video. Like it if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, or just don't do any of it. I'm not telling you what to do.